All right. So what are we looking at here, guys? You guys need to pull these lessons up, please. Yeah, they're giving food to the homeless or the unemployed. All right, here we go. We're getting this going. Thank you much. So, what do we call this? It is the Great Depression, but what is it called?
A coffee shop.
It's called a bread line. Okay, it's a bread line. These guys, mostly guys, are heading into a soup kitchen to potentially grab some free donuts, coffee, maybe a bowl of broth, possibly some bread. Has anybody ever been to the FDR monument in DC where they've got the bread line monument? Just check it out. All right, so let's take a look at Hoover's presidency and the election of 1928 rather. So Coolidge, remember, he is elected only really to one term because his first term, guys, I don't need to compete to talk. Thank you. Appreciate it. So in Coolidge in the first term, he got into that office because of the death of Harding. Remember Coolidge? He is a big business president, laissez-faire, wins re-election. The bull market is raging under Coolidge's term in office. Hoover's almost kind of like hand-picked. He had been part of the Treasury Department, in the Commerce Department, served as Secretary of Commerce. He was Stanford educated. He was a Republican, big business guy, laissez-faire type of guy. He was an economist by trade, self-made millionaire in the mining industry. And he's going to run on this policy of rugged individualism. He runs against an anti-prohibition guy by the name of Alfred Smith. They call him Alcohol Al because he wants to get rid of the prohibition. Another thing for Al Smith is that he's Roman Catholic. Keep in mind, at this time, that was sort of a deal breaker in politics on the national scale. Who's our first Catholic president? No? Nope. But you should know. You know this one. No. JFK, John F. Kennedy. So radio played a big role in this victory for Hoover. This is a landslide, and again, Hoover's one of these people that sort of has to deal and inherits a lot of the problems that came from the administrations before him. Obviously, the great crash, October 29th, 1929, the stock market crashes. Most of America did not have stock, but the stock market was tied to a lot of business, certainly a lot of banks. And really, the depression begins, or the events that lead to the depression begin before the stock market crash. You can look back to the housing panic that occurred in the mid-1920s, the surplus and economic crisis caused by World War I. Wasn't that big of a crisis in America, but it was significant. Not like it was globally, especially in Europe. Another issue here is that the majority of American goods in the billions of dollars was bought on credit. And a lot of people just had to save their money. So when the market crashes, a lot of currency is completely lost. And a lot of those people were involved in the stock market had bought their stocks on margin. By 1930, 4 million Americans were jobless. 2 years later, the number goes up to 12 million. Unemployment rose at its absolute worst to 25%. And I think it's really important to point out, among the African American community, 50%. Because of bank runs, this is where people go and withdraw their money. There's no regulation. There's no Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. There's no Security Exchange Commission. And the Federal Reserve had very little capability to stop this. Thousands of banks collapsed as a result of this. One of the biggest problems, have you guys ever heard of Ben Bernanke before? He's a brilliant American economist. He was the head of the Fed when the market crashed in 07, 08. And there's a big reason why he was put in that position, and that is because Ben Bernanke wrote his PhD dissertation on the Great Depression, and he pointed out the greatest obstacle that the Depression created was frozen credit, right? Frozen credit means no one has any ability to get any goods. So your domestic economic sort of supply and demand is frozen. And if you don't have any liquid capital to spend and you got no credit to spend, then refrigerators are going to sit in warehouses, cars are going to sit on lots, grain elevators are going to be filled without moving to market, tobacco and cotton are going to sit on the docks and rot. And that's going to be the issue. Nice. Yeah. So this is a big reason why the bailout occurred in 07, 08, moving into 09. Bernanke is sitting at the table advising all of the big banks saying, you all are too big to fail. We've got to figure out, and this is why 07 and 08 was very difficult for historians and economists and politicos, because you could have cracked open a book, a 6th grade history book, and learned, not to mention a collegiate level history book, to learn from this very mistake that was made here. These are the moments why this course and your understanding of United States history are important, because we don't need to repeat these crises. We don't need to live through those. There doesn't need to be booms. Even though markets being cyclical, there doesn't need to be a financial panic that nearly causes a revolution every 10 to 12, 20 years. So they start calling the homeless shelters Hoovervilles. Now I do want to take a minute to sort of defend Hoover a little bit. I think he requires a bit of defense. I'm not saying he's the greatest president of all time by any means, but I think he's been sort of, I don't know, become a bit of a sort of scapegoat for the era. Ladies and gents, what are we looking at here? We are looking at a statue of George Washington. Very good. Where is it? It's not in D.C. It's not in Richmond. Hello. It is in New York. Very good. It is in New York. Where is it in New York? Where? No. No. This is where Washington took his inaugural address and took the oath of office and gave his first inaugural address. That is Federal Hall. This is across the street from where? No, it's in New York City, Jarvis. For the love of everything holy. Thank you. It is on Wall Street. It is across from the New York Stock Exchange. Thank you. Thank you. Good. Good, good, good. Okay, that's the day of the crash. That is October 29th, 1929. All right, good job, guys. Good job. Good brainstorming there. All right, so Hoover's course of action. Keep in mind, this is where Hoover requires a bit of defense. Hoover is not a do-nothing president. Hoover is an economist. He believes markets are cyclical. He does not believe it is the government's job to bail the country out. He has a Treasury Secretary, Andrew Mellon, who's one of the wealthiest men in America. Hoover is a self-made millionaire. He is a up-by-the-bootstraps kind of guy. His campaign slogan was rugged individualism. He doesn't feel like it's the job of the government to pull the country out, but he is the first president born west of the Mississippi. He's from West Branch, Iowa. So he is wanting to try to provide support for farmers to make sure that agriculture is sound and goods are able to move to market. So he's going to push forth the Agricultural Marketing Act, the establishment of the Federal Farm Board, the establishment of the Grain Stabilization Corporation, and the establishment of the Cotton Stabilization Corporation. What these are trying to do is prevent massive surpluses to be able to continue to move goods to market. But there's a stumbling block, and he reluctantly signs this bill. This tariff is the nail, one of the nails in the coffin for the Depression, going from domestic to global. It's called the Hawley-Smoot tariff. It's named for Reed, Smoot, and Willis Hawley. They're senators that supported this bill. It sets up tariffs on over 20,000 goods. And what it leads to are retaliatory tariffs that will be passed, create a global trade war. Now, it doesn't screech everything to a halt, but it moves trade to a slow trickle. That was devastating for the global economy. That tariff is important. This is a tariff we can learn from. When you talk about trade wars, and you talk about the strangling of global trade, this is the first time that we see global trade really limited during America's time as a world global power. Another point that I want to make, and I'll get to the question in a second, this is where it's very difficult to be too critical of Hoover, because what you have to understand is Hoover's prior knowledge is that major panics, depressions, and recessions had been created by European markets, right? And that America in the past, not all tariffs, obviously, not all tariffs, had created big problems for American production. However, due to his Secretary of the Treasury, Andrew Mellon, Mellon had encouraged overproduction. So with these tariffs, America's stuck with these massive surpluses in agriculture and finished products, and they can't move the goods to market. Nobody domestically can afford them, and they can't get them beyond their shores. You have to think about global devastation. The effects of World War I on Europe, the effects of imperialism in the Pacific. I'll get to you in just a second. What's up?
Well, I know that Peru really hard, but were they exporting more than importing it?
We were for sure. I mean, we're out producing everyone.
So that's why they raised it. If like theoretically it would work if they were just like getting more money for the same thing.
Right. But when you've got no circulation of money and you have frozen credit, then there's no one can buy them. And this is what's, goes back to Bernanke's thesis on the Depression, that all of these are all problems. Stock market crash, bank runs, Hawley-Smoot tariff, but it's the freezing of the credit that's the dagger. You know what I mean? Correct. All right, very good. Do you guys find this interesting at all? A little bit? Okay. So here's Willis E. Hawley on the left, Reed Smoot on the right. It's sometimes called the Hawley-Smoot, sometimes called the Reed-Smoot. Sometimes called the Smoot-Hawley, sometimes just called the Tariff of 1930. It was a major cause of the Great Depression. So what are your causes? Over-speculation of stocks. We also call that stock watering. Over-speculation of land. The ability to buy stocks on margin. The ability to buy everything on credit. Now again, credit is a double-edged sword. We need credit, but we've got to be safe with credit, right? My advice to you guys is when you you need to. You're going to have to get credit cards. But when you do them, pay them off. You got to build up your credit. That's like the irony of it all. In order to be able to do anything economically, you've got to have credit. But be disciplined, right? Pay your credit off. Don't pay 70% on a pizza that you eat in college, okay? So it's not good economics. Overproduction of consumer goods, large surpluses. Another part of this too, the World War I surpluses were an issue. World World War I surpluses and consumer surpluses from the 20s create a major issue. The Federal Reserve's failure to prevent widespread collapse, really, for the banking system, but you can only blame the Fed so much because that wasn't their role. They were in the role of circulating currency. They were in the role of, they had the control of circulation, but they didn't have a regulatory plan to ensure deposits. That comes with the New Deal. Bank runs, a major problem. One of the first major bank runs occurs in New York City, and then it just spreads like wildfire. Similarly, a major bank run in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it spreads like wildfire. Again, Hawley Smoot is a big one that's problematic for the global trade. And then again, Black Tuesday, October 29, 1929. I do want to make it very clear, and I already mentioned this. You don't have like an overwhelming majority of Americans that are owning stock, but so much business, commerce, and banking is connected to it. So, again, some of the things that we got to look at for Hoover, he gets the brunt of the blame for the Great Depression, but it's not necessary. It shouldn't necessarily be warranted because a lot of it just all really fell apart as he comes into office. A lot of critics noted that he could feed millions in Belgium, which he led that aid program in the post-World War I era. Remember, we helped our allies with aid, but not the Central Powers, which creates problems leading up to World War II. But again, that international experience was for the betterment of his leadership in the long run. He didn't really feel like the government should be involved in the economic process. He wanted to let business do business. He was a laissez-faire guy. But he's going to actually abandon laissez-faire. And he is going to move forth with governmental economic programs to try to get the country back on track. If we want to fault Hoover for one thing, it's just too little too late. Well, we shouldn't fault him for doing nothing because that's not the truth. He actually did try to do something. Again, we have to remember Hoover's background. He's Stanford educated. He's an economist. He's never seen an economic crisis that would warrant government intervention. He understands the theory of economics as a cyclical marketplace with booms and busts. Do you guys talk much about the history of American economics in your econ classes? Okay. All right. Well, glad we're hitting it here. This is a political cartoon against Hoover. Hoover's response to Black Tuesday. Detour on Business Boulevard. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that Hoover does try to do. Creating $2.25 billion in projects to alleviate the suffering of the Depression, to put people to work. Building roads, building bridges, the construction of the Hoover Dam, also known as the Boulder Dam, on the Colorado River, largest hydroelectric dam. This is one of the greatest engineering feats in modern world history. The Muscle Shoals Bill to dam up the Tennessee River Valley. It's called the TVA project. It actually doesn't come to fruition until the New Deal under Roosevelt. What are they trying to build on the Tennessee Valley? Taking a play out of Buck Duke's playbook from North Carolina. What's up? Not a college. What are they trying to build on the river? What type of dams? Hydroelectric dams. The Hoover Dam is a hydroelectric dam, bless you. They are trying to build hydroelectric dams. So the Tennessee Valley Authority, we're going to talk more about that as we move into the Great Depression. A movement away from laissez-faire, establishment of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation to help banks recover, which that doesn't happen. That's clearly too little too late. The Norris LaGuardia Anti-Injection Act that outlawed anti-union contracts to bolster labor. But again, a lot of people saw this as not enough. Hoover also made some public comments that were taken out of context, like made a comment of like, people are like, yeah, people are starving, they're dying, they have nowhere to live, they have nothing to eat. It's like, well, maybe I should lend them a dime. That was seen as sort of callous and unsympathetic of to the American people. That's going to ultimately inspire Al Jolson's song, "Can You Spare Me a Dime?" Has anybody ever heard of it? We're going to listen to that today. Kind of bring you down, but we're going to check it out. That's part of what I want to take a look at today. Yeah, for sure. People started calling the shacks and shanties in parks like Central Park Hoovervilles. So there we have the Boulder Hoover Dam under construction. I've got a portion of a film I want to show you on the building of the Hoover Dam. And then I would like to wrap up today with the Bonus Army. Has anybody out there ever heard of the Bonus Army before? Yeah? Okay. So the Bonus Army is really one of the saddest events of this era, and this is what brings Hoover's bid for re-election and his political career to rock bottom. And that is, much like, remember we talked about Jacob Coxey and Coxey's army marching on Washington for labor rights and the ability to get jobs? Well, World War I veterans were owed back pay in the post-World War I era, and they led a march on Washington where they set up tents and lean-tos and encampments with their families. These are unemployed soldiers, veterans of World War I, from the Anacostia River all the way to the Capitol. Have you guys ever been to a Nationals game before or been up there? Pretty cool. That's where the Anacostia is. So you can imagine that's a pretty large encampment. What they want is their bonuses. So how does the government and Hoover respond? He orders the Army to be led by Douglas MacArthur and George Patton, who had risen to prominence during World War I and will have major commands in World War II, to crush the protesters by marching and sending tanks down Pennsylvania Avenue. And people are going to die. Children are going to die in this event. This is one of those events that kind of gets forgotten about. You can imagine this is a public relations nightmare, but it also makes the country feel like we're on the brink of what? Yeah, we're on the brink of a revolution. People were, this shook the country. And this is what, one of the things that propels FDR, because FDR is going to take advantage of this Bonus Army situation, and he's going to run with it, and it's going to be a big part of the platform. Do you know what Roosevelt's role was during World War I? What department of the military he was in? He was in the Department of the Navy during World War I. There's the Bonus Army protest. And we've got what Roosevelt's going to do is come in and run on the platform of what? Not rugged individualism, but what's his platform in the election of 1932? Roosevelt. He's got a new something for the country. Not new freedom, but a new deal. A new deal for America. So he's going to run on this New Deal platform using rhetoric like, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That's part of his inauguration address. And it's kind of funny, I want to sort of close out here. There are some areas of the country that were not as heavily impacted by the Great Depression as others, like Appalachia and the Deep South and Native American reservations. I got my grandmother's input on this, which was very great, right before she passed away. And I said, how did the Great Depression impact you in Allegheny County? Because my grandmother, when she was 14, was sent to Eagle Rock. It's a little tiny town near where I grew up, to essentially raise her aunt's children during the Depression. Very Jimmy Braddock, like from Cinderella Man. And I asked my grandmother, I said, how did it impact you guys? She said, honestly, it really didn't, because we were poor before the Depression anyway. So we didn't know any different. So that's part of this. You know, you have to look at the complexity of the Great Depression and what the Great Depression did to our nation and how it really did push our nation to the brink. But here's where I want us to think as we move forward. The New Deal is going to it's going to be some good, bad, and ugly. There are going to be some good legacies. There are going to be some not so good legacies. And there's going to be things in the New Deal that just didn't work out or unconstitutional. But the truth of the matter is, the New Deal just got the, bless you, it got employment rolling again. But what really pulled America out of the Great Depression is World War II. And this is sort of a story back to my grandparents. My grandmother worked in a munitions factory in Virginia Beach during the war. My grandfather served in the Philippines. Upon interviewing my grandmother, this may have been the same interview, it might have been a different one. I always talk to her about this type of thing. One time my cousins and I sat down and interviewed her for like 8 hours. Well, at different times. And recorded it, wrote it all down. We said, did you take the job at the munitions factory for patriotism? She said, maybe, but, and she was about your age at the time. She said, actually, I took it because I saw more money in a month than I saw in a year. That's something that we have to think about with this generation of people. They lived through the Depression. They not only fought and died in World War II, but they fought and built this country and got the country back during World War II on the home front. So we got to keep that in mind as we move into World War II. So, you guys have any questions for me? Cool. We'll wrap this up next class. I'm going to pump the brakes here.